Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely flip the script on how you look at conflict. Instead of treating it like some brutal battle you have to win, we're going to show you how to treat it like a collaborative puzzle you get to solve. And you don't need some magical superpower to do it. You just need a very specific set of tools. Let's dive in. Here's the master blueprint for today. We'll be rapidly unpacking 6 distinct tools. We'll take a deep dive into active listening, navigate strategic questioning, reframe conflict, test reality, balance empathy and neutrality, and finally, actually construct a sustainable resolution.
First up, our deep dive into active listening and exploring the iceberg depth gauge. To really pull this off, we have to fundamentally redefine what it actually means to listen. Think of a master mediator. They don't just hear the literal words being thrown around. They use this concept, the iceberg depth gauge, to dive way past the surface and figure out what isn't being said. Because, let's be honest, the conflict is almost never about what they're actually arguing about on the surface.
Okay, let's break down this dive step by step. You've got 4 levels on this iceberg. Level 1 is right above the water, the surface level words and facts. This is where everyone gets stuck fighting, right? But as a mediator, you're dropping down to level 2 to find the emotions. How do they actually feel about those facts? Then you go deeper. Level 3 is all about interests, why this issue even matters to them in the first place. Finally, you hit rock bottom at level 4, the underlying needs. These are the core human drivers of the whole conflict, things like respect, or security, or belonging. Here's the secret. If you can solve for level 4, the level 1 fight completely disappears. But how do you actually make that dive without drowning in their argument? Well, you've got to use your mediator's gear to anchor yourself. That means holding undivided eye contact in an open posture, so they know you're fully present. It means paraphrasing their facts in your own words so they really feel heard. You use mirroring, literally repeating their exact specific keywords to prompt them to keep talking. And finally, you summarize everything to capture the essence and completely validate what they're experiencing. Think of this gear as your oxygen tank. All right, moving on to part 2, navigating with strategic questioning using the Pathfinder matrix. Now that we know how to listen and, breathe underwater, let's grab our next tool, strategic questioning. Remember, mediators aren't interrogators. We are door openers. Looking at the Pathfinder matrix, you can see we have 3 specific keys to open those doors: open, closed, and hypothetical questions. But you can't just throw questions out there randomly. You need to know exactly which key you're reaching for, and exactly why. When you look at them side by side, the strategy becomes super clear. You use open questions when you want to explore broadly, like what matters most to you here. They're completely unstructured. Then you pivot to closed binary questions when you desperately need to anchor specific facts, like, did this happen on Tuesday? Next up, Section 3, reframing conflict to collaboration by changing the language. I absolutely love this third tool because it basically lets you perform conversational alchemy on really toxic, angry words. Reframing is just the process of stripping away the negative, adversarial tone from a statement without losing its core meaning. It is the ultimate linguistic trick to stop people from attacking each other and get them collaborating instead. Let's watch this play out. Step 1 is that toxic position we've all wanted to scream at some point: my neighbor is a noisy jerk. Now, instead of letting that just blow up the room, you move to step 2. You act as a filter, identifying the raw emotion. They're clearly angry and exhausted. Step 3, you extract the neutral interest hiding beneath all that anger. Okay, you need a quiet environment to sleep. And finally, step 4, you spin it into an actionable, problem-solving question. How can we establish mutually acceptable quiet hours? Boom, you just took a verbal grenade and turned it into a building block. Let's head into Section 4, reality testing and summarizing to distill the discussion. Once you've used reframing to pull out these actionable ideas, you have to distill all the noise and put those proposed solutions to the ultimate test. Think of this whole process like a giant funnel. At the very top, you've got all the noise. You're just trying to highlight common ground in a sea of totally different narratives. In the middle, use your summarizing tool to distill that discussion, validating what's been said and narrowing the gap. And then out the bottom, drop these beautiful structured building blocks. This sets your agenda, steering the parties away from past grievances and directly toward future solutions. Now, before we put those new solutions to the test, we usually need to step out of the joint room and into what we call a caucus. So what is a caucus? It's just a confidential one-on-one meeting between the mediator and one of the parties. We do this to create a totally safe space for incredibly candid discussions. It's a place where someone can finally admit they might be wrong or agree to a compromise without having to lose face in front of their opponent. Inside the safety of that caucus, you run every proposed solution through this 6-ring litmus test. Because listen, you do not want to accept an agreement just because they're exhausted and want to go home. You have to test it. Is the intent clear to an outsider? Is it specific on who exactly does what? Is it practically executable? Is the effort actually balanced between both sides? Do they realistically have the resources to pull it off? And finally, is it measurable? Like, how will we actually know when it's done? If a solution passes all 6 rings, you don't just have an agreement, you have a sustainable agreement.
Section 5. Balancing empathy and neutrality. The mediator's tightrope walk. While you're juggling all these amazing tools, you're going to face your absolute biggest challenge, and it's an internal one. The core of a mediator's identity is walking a massive emotional tightrope, holding 2 seemingly opposite forces in continuous harmony. If you lean too far to one side, the whole mediation just collapses. Let's look at the weights on this scale. On the left side, you've got to build deep rapport and empathy. You are constantly validating heavy emotions, acknowledging vulnerable perspectives, and creating psychological safety. You really have to care. But, and this is a big but, on the right side, you have to maintain strict impartiality and neutrality. You can never give direct advice or pass judgment. You have to ensure equal speaking time and total procedural fairness. The golden rule here? You care deeply about the people, but you remain completely neutral about the problem. The solution has to come from them, not you. Finally, Section 6, building a sustainable resolution, putting the master blueprint together. All right, our toolkit is fully open. We know how to walk the tightrope, so let's zoom out. How does this all piece together to actually build that final agreement? Well, this master blueprint is the map of your entire mediation journey, showing your tools plotted against time. Look at how active listening is this continuous wave right across the top. You literally never stop doing that. But strategic questioning, that peaks early on during storytelling, and again later in the caucus when you're exploring options. Reframing handles all that direct emotional communication in the middle phases. Reality testing is that bright orange beacon happening safely inside the private caucus. And summarizing, those are your transition pillars, constantly setting the agenda as you move from phase to phase. It's a highly structured, beautiful dance. Step by step, using that blueprint, you're guiding the parties up these stairs. You kick off with structured communication, which naturally builds deeper understanding. Once they finally get where the other person is coming from, you use your iceberg gauge to uncover their true interests. That leads to generating real options, collaborative negotiation, and finally, reaching that settlement at the very top. And the whole foundation holding those stairs up, that's the sustainable resolution you just built. So the crucial takeaway I want to leave you with today is this. Conflict, whether it's in business, in relationships, or just in life, is completely inevitable. It's going to happen. But combat? Combat is optional. When those inevitable arguments pop up, how will you use these tools? The deep diving, the strategic, questioning, the reframing, to turn your next conflict into a puzzle you can solve together. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and until next time, keep building.